You can invite wildlife to your backyard, but sometimes the wildlife that comes to visit is uninvited, and we call this nuisance wildlife. But there's no need to panic because there are sensitive and environmentally sound ways that you can deal with nuisance wildlife. Here are some of the things that we recommend. One is to deal with the habitat that you are providing for wildlife. If you put out food, then you're going to attract things that eat it. Definitely don't feed pets in your backyard. And sometimes even bird feeders can attract things such as rodents. So make sure you're not overfeeding the birds, and you might want to place your bird feeders further away from your home. Also, water is a great attractant of wildlife, and it's great if you want wildlife, but sometimes wildlife that you weren't intending comes along, such as water snakes, and sometimes you place pools in your yard and put fish that you want to enjoy in it, and you invite things that eat those fish, such as great blue herons. The other thing that a lot of folks put out are bird houses and other forms of shelter for wildlife, but there's some forms of shelter that are in your backyard that encourages wildlife, again, that you might not want. For example, if you have brush piles or log piles or rock piles, you're going to have the occasional uninvited snake. Now, in my case, I enjoy snakes in my backyard, but often folks call and want to know how they can rid their yard of snakes. Removing this cover or this shelter is one way that you can discourage unwanted snakes from being in your backyard. There are some specific things you need to remember about wildlife nuisance control. That is, don't overreact. Don't panic. Not every snake that you see is a copperhead. There are many non-poisonous snakes in Tennessee. In Middle Tennessee, you only have to worry about copperheads and timber rattlesnakes being poisonous. Statewide, we only have 4 types of snakes that are poisonous. That's the timber rattlesnake, the pygmy rattlesnake, the northern copperhead, and the cottonmouth. In Middle Tennessee, we only have copperheads and timber rattlesnakes that could even possibly be poisonous. So most of the snakes that you see are non-poisonous and are even beneficial. A phone call that we get very often at the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency is one on bats. People are often afraid of bats, and if you have bats in your attic, of course, you will need to get those removed. But one thing to remember is that only 0.1% of all bats have rabies, so not very many bats have rabies. The best way to keep them out of your attic is to exclude them, which means to plug any hole that a bat could come through. You have to remember, though, that a bat can come through a hole the size of a nickel, so you have to really close up the holes that lead into your attic. But you can exclude bats. You can have a night watch for bats, watch where they are coming out of your attic in the evening, and close up those areas. Never exclude bats in June and July. And now in the South, where it's getting warmer, I would even extend that to May through August, because there is a possibility that you will exclude the adult bats out of your attic, but you'll leave the baby bats inside. Another thing you can do is place a bat box nearby, and hopefully that will encourage the bats to leave your attic and to use a bat box instead of your home. Remember, bats are one of our #1 predators of night-flying insects, which are mosquitoes, and so they are very beneficial, and most bats do not have rabies. If you have a wildlife problem, such as woodpeckers pecking on your house, or skunks getting into your heat and air unit, or raccoons getting in your crawl space underneath your house or in your basement, you need to act immediate on these things. Sometimes wildlife is moving in to establish a territory. The quicker you act on wildlife problems, the sooner the animal will leave, and the less likely that it will set up a territory that it's becoming comfortable in. But again, don't panic. Things like coyotes and foxes, there's never been a human-coyote altercation in the state. There's been no direct contact between humans and coyotes, so please don't panic. And same way with foxes. Oftentimes folks will see a fox in their backyard, but they are harmless to humans. So just, again, keep your backyard clean of the food, water, and shelter that would attract unwanted wildlife, and you should be okay.